today. Our first speaker will be Ms. Pat Clanton, who has a very long history of not only being a preservationist, but a community activist in the city of Covington. Pat got started a long time ago in the 60s, working for the Newcomers Club in Covington and the Chamber of Commerce Auxiliary. After that, in the 70s, she became executive director of the Greater Covington Chamber of Commerce. In the 80s, she served for 2 years on the Covington Planning and Zoning Board, and in 1987 ran for the Covington City Council. She served for 12 years total on the City Council, 8 as a district council person and 4 as a council at large. She worked tirelessly in preservation to reopen the Bogue Falaya Wayside Park, which is at the end of New Hampshire Street. And she worked very hard also to restore these original brick pillars that are at the entrance to the Bogue Falaya Wayside Park, and she'll be telling you more about that. Most importantly, she worked to restore the Columbia Street Landing, which is at the foot of Columbia Street where the Bogue Falaya River flows, and it is known as the birthplace of Covington. Without further ado, I'll let Ms. Clanton start the conversation this morning and begin the presentation. Thank you for being here.
I want to start by saying that the footpaths of the future are guided by the footprints of the past. And we have all been on the path, and it's up to us to put those footprints for the next generations to come. I am going to tell you about the Columbia Street Landing, which is only 3 blocks from this hotel, and it is the birthplace of Covington. In the 1800s, people came to Covington either by horse-drawn wagon or boat, and most came by boat. Thousands of people left Europe in the 1800s, and so many of them came through the port of Orleans. And after that, they boarded boats, came across Lake Pontchartrain, up the Covington, the Bogue Falaya River, which is the furthest place north that the boats could go. There was a viable port, import, export, cotton, lumber, bricks, household, whiskey, everything came by boat. And these are the people that settled the community. Very resourceful people. And we owe so much to this port. These are just some scenes. This is where the King of Carnival arrived by boat for a number of years. The river was dredged then, but later on they stopped dredging the river after automobiles and railroads brought the people. So the port became abandoned to some extent. It became a lonely place. And it was allowed that the road down to the port grow up in bushes and shrubs and trees, and literally forgotten. I knew that this was such an important part of our history. And when I was elected to the council in 1987, that put me in a position to say, we need to return this to the people. This should not be lost. And it's such a lovely view on the river. So going through some of the hoops that you go through and planting the seed, and I want to talk to you about being the seed planter of a project. Be sure when you plant the seed that you are going to be vigilant and have the fortitude to keep going with it, even after you run into perhaps financial problem, property problem, getting permits, whatever it takes to get to the finish line. You have to be willing to keep not forgetting the dream, but keep going. So finally, here is the plaque that's at the landing, which tells you a little bit about it. We did finally reach this after several years. It didn't happen quickly, But after having town meetings, finding out that other people would like to be able to go to the river there, we did have a wonderful celebration in 1994. It was returned. Now it's a place, it's a lovely place. The Covington Garden Club beautified the way down to the river. Mayor Keith Hillary felt there should be a wharf, and now that is used as a stage. There are weddings, concerts, parties, picnics, and just being able to sit by the river and enjoy it. So we're very happy that this came about. We're going to go around one curve in the river and talk about Bogue Falaya Park. The park was bought in 1908, a 13-acre park for $3,000. And during the years, the city gave the park to the state in 1938. And in 1978, it was almost forgotten by that time because the city could not keep up the funds to keep the park in a pristine condition, and then the river became polluted, so it was closed. The gates were closed. The park was missed but forgotten. And I went to work for the Chamber of Commerce in 1979. And in the early 80s, the Chamber Board decided that the park would be their next project to return that to the people. Well, in the interim, floods had come, big logs had floated down the river, destroying picnic tables and other things. So it was a wonderful example of what good can come from intergovernment agreements. Some of the board members went to the parish and obtained some money for this project. I went to Mayor Cooper, who was the Mayor Cooper before Mayor Cooper, his father, and I said, I think this would be a feather in your cap to return this park to the people. But, and I'm not here to ask for money. I am here to ask that the city street department workers can give us the labor in the park, and that was granted. Some other members went to Governor Treen and State Representative Bill Strain and knew that there was a grant available, and they got the grant. And the grant turned out to be $150,000. So we were able to get new picnic tables, refurbish the pavilion, take down the logs, take down trees that had fallen, and the trash, and bring in fresh new sand. And on a beautiful day in June, the feather in the cap, or the icing on the cake, was that we had the United States Marine Corps band stationed at the hotel, and at the given time, all the dignitaries from the different governments were here. The ribbon was ready to be cut, and when the Marine Corps band came down the street with people following them like the Pied Piper, it was a glorious day. And it makes me very happy to drive through that park and see how people enjoy their lunches and the festivals. There are constant festivals in the park. So we are very lucky to have this wonderful 13-acre park. And sometimes it's just the solitude that people go to the park. In 1920, a Dr. Stevenson gave to the city a gate to the park with two wonderful columns. And I kept thinking about those columns. They had grown over with vines and bushes. And really, another thing that was forgotten. And I thought, this is a piece of history. We need to keep this for ourselves and future generations. So, after getting permission to refurbish the park, and the plaque says to his parents, Dr. Stevenson's honoring his parents. After getting permission to get the parks refurbished, the pillars, because they were falling, you could see the mortar was gone. I went to a man named Ronnie Russell, who was part of our street department, a master mason. And I said, Ronnie, what is it going to take to get these looking right and refurbish them? He said, well, we have to take them apart. We have to number the bricks. We have to stack the bricks. And then, when we can find time to work on it, we'll put it back together. And I thought he was kidding. Couldn't really be that. But he did, and that's what they did. They took them apart, they numbered the bricks, and you have to remember, these were our city workers who take care of all the leaks and all the problems and the ditches and the trimming. And as they had time, they put it together. And that's why I said, if you plant the seed, you have to be ready to be patient to when is it going to get done. And a lot of time went by.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. This is, could we go back to that? This is Ronnie Russell welding those. We found a foundry in Shreveport that made the cannonballs because they were long gone. So he welded these on so they won't be stolen. There's a picture of the church, little Episcopalian chapel, and we're not going to talk about it except to say it was built in 1846 and it is in pristine condition, and that's what constant preservation does. This is perfect and lovely. And we are a tree city, and we protect our live oak trees to preserve them as much as possible. And this is the Emil Frederick Oak in the middle of New Hampshire Street, because the city didn't want to take the tree. They built the street. We have several places with trees in the middle of the street. What's next? One more thing to tell. This arch was also built in 1920, dedicated to the doughboys of World War I. It was beginning to fall and crumble, and I could remember walking through that arch as a child going to the fair. And here was a problem with something that belonged to St. Tammany Parish, but in the city limits. And I thought, this just can't just fall down. This is a beautiful, unusual arch. This project took at least 4 years because it kept, we'd think, yes, it's a go, and it for some reason would fall apart. But the fourth year, the right person came forward, saw to it that the dedication was on it, which had never been there before. When it was built of the cheapest brick, red brick. So he called me and said, we're ready to paint. Oh, I didn't tell you. How did we get it done? He went to the jailer and he said, we need a mason. We need painters. We need people on scaffolds. Can you furnish this for us? And they did. And again, it became a reality. And I just think these things are so important, as you do. And it's my delight to be here to tell you these little stories. Yes?
Was the work actually done by the prisoners?
Yes, it was.
Staff, prisoners?
By the prisoners. I'm sure they were glad to have it out. And it was done. So So the footpaths of the future are guided by the footprints of the past. Thank you.